It's no secret, I adore using Astro, and I love what the team is doing to improve developer experience building for the web. The Astro framework integrates very nicely with things like Alpine.js, Svelte, React for these islands, and it's such a nice way to build for the web. I am really excited about the future of Astro, and I thought we'd spend this video to go through one of their newest features. And this is the improvement to managing environment variables. It feels like every day Astro are releasing new things. Actually, they are releasing things every day. It is awesome. Before we dive into what's new, let's take a quick look at what currently exists with Astro's environment variable support. So, just like any other .env implementation, we're able to create a .env file and add all of our different environment variables with the values. And the way that we access those is using the syntax import meta.env. And this is largely thankful to the system in which Astro is built on. And if we want IntelliSense for TypeScript, we have to modify manually the env.dts file and add all of our different interfaces there for our read-only environment variables. But what if we could do that and have a better developer experience by just defining a single schema for our environment variables? That's what we'll learn in this video. So in 4.10 or 4.10, they introduced a lot of cool things, but today I want to talk about this new experimental Astro Env. Now, if you're like me and you have used lots of tools to manage environment variables, then you know they aren't strictly typed. There's no way to know what type of variable is or could be, and there's no way to kind of add any validations around that. Should it begin with something or should it be optional? You often have to build that logic into your components or your code to work without environment variables. When you run your app, it'll not tell you until you actually execute some code that environment variable is wrong. So this new update makes all of that a lot easier, and it removes anything you've had to install before by baking this right in. So let's take a quick look at what they are telling us in this blog article. The complexities for managing environment variables is that you need some variables on the server and some on the client. And actually, well, if you do have server secrets, you don't want those to be exposed or output to the build artifact when you kind of output your Astro site. Then there are some variables which are required for your app to run. There could be variables that, are okay to leave out, but they're not really necessary and required for things to work. And really, you have to kind of build that logic into the code like we've discussed. And if you're using Cloudflare, Dino, or whatever else, it just kind of detects that and works automatically, which is super, super cool. And if you don't want to define any variables, you don't have to. This will work with and around that. So let's check it out inside of an Astro project and see what this looks like. So here inside my code editor, the first thing I'm going to do is open up this file, Astro config. And then inside of here, we're going to import a new envField. And this is what we'll use to declare the schema for our environment variables. So inside of define config, we're going to open up experimental. And inside of here, if we go down to env and we open that up, it's inside of here we can actually declare the schema for our environment variables. Let's use two common examples, Stripe keys. If you're selling online, you've probably heard of Stripe. And if you're using it with Astro, well, you can add those to this configuration, and we can declare which is a secret key, which should be on the server only, and a publishable public key that we can use on the client with our React components, Stripe elements, and anything else. So inside of the schema, I'm going to declare Stripe secret key, and then we're going to pass it the value of envField.string. Now, if we click here, we can see we have different types of environment variables that we can declare. But for this example, we're only going to use strings, but just know you can use any one of these. The first thing that we'll declare inside of this string environment variable is the context. We'll set this to server because this is an environment variable that will be set on the server. Then the access here, we want this to be secret. This shouldn't be exposed to the server, and it should only be accessible by the server. And if you've used Stripe before, you'll know that the API keys start with SK or PK for secret and publishable keys. So for the secret key, we want to validate that this starts with sk underscore. And depending on your application, you might want to specify whether this is optional or not. I'm going to specify false, so if I try to start the server without this value, it's going to tell us. Next, I want to make a public Stripe publishable key field. And again, this will be another string. But this time the context is actually going to be for the client. I only want to use this inside of a component that is using Stripe elements. So this is accessible through one of our Astro or React components. And because this is on the client, we have public access. There's no way to make that secret. And again with this, we can specify that we want this to start with pk underscore for publishable key. Now let's save that. And inside of the root of our project, let's create a file and we'll call this .env. Inside of here, we'll declare those keys, Stripe secret key, and we'll specify that this is sk123. Now if I open the terminal and I start the Astro server, we'll see here that we get an error. We can see that the variable public Stripe publishable key is not of the type string. So let's add that to our .env file and specify here that it starts with something else. This isn't prefixed with pk underscore that the config that we declared earlier is set to. So when we start the server now, we should see another error. And the error here is that the environment variables for that Stripe publishable key do not match the data type or the properties defined in that schema. So already we have some validation against the environment variables and the names that we use, and this is super helpful. Now let's go back to the .env file and we'll update the Stripe publishable key to now be a value that is valid. Now if we go back to the terminal and once again we run the server, we'll see now that Astro started successfully. Awesome! So now we have that. Now let's move our attention to actually using these environment variables within our project. Now if you want to use these on the server or in a client component, there are different ways to do that. So let's explore what it looks like inside of a component. Inside of the source directory, we'll open up our page, index.astro. So at the top of our file, we can import from Astro Env, and the client this time will import Stripe publishable key. And we can see here, Astro is able to, with IntelliSense, show us the environment variables that are available because everything is typed here. We get full power of the Astro system and the development experience and the development server to make this experience a breeze. Now with this, let's go down and we'll just insert this into the H1. We'll save that. And if we open our application, and here we can see the value of that .env file because it's a public publishable Stripe key. Now let's create a new file inside of our pages, and this time we'll create an API route. So we'll create the file inside of the folder API, hello world. And we'll give this a file extension of .json.ts because we're exporting JSON. Let's just follow some good practices from the Astro docs. Now from this file, we'll just export a new const, which is get, which uses the API route type that we can get from Astro. And inside of here, we just want to return JSON, and we're just going to specify hello world right now. Now, when we go back to our browser and we go to /API/hello world.json, we see that we get hello world back. But we actually want to get from the server that environment variable. And to get the environment variable, we can import from Astro Env/server get secret. Then inside of the function for our HTTP GET method, here we can call Stripe secret key, and we can call get secret. And now we've got access to the secrets that are available inside of our schema that we define inside of the Astro config. So here we'll use Stripe secret key. Now let's take this and we'll return it inside of our JSON. Now if we save the file and go back to our browser and refresh, we'll see that we get that secret key. And we haven't had to install any third parties. This is all built in, all fully typed, and it's really easy to use depending on where you need to use public and private environment variables. If you found this video interesting and you're using Astro or you're using Astro and the new environment variable schema, let me know in the comments to a link to your site. I would love to check it out.